Hello, American Patriots, and welcome to another episode of the Douglas Ducote Show. You had many places you could be tonight, chose to be here, and for that, I am forever grateful. Thank you very, very much. Some of you may have noticed that I've been gone for the past 7 days. It's not because I took a vacation to Hawaii. It's because YouTube decided to censor my First Amendment rights, and we're going to talk about that, as well as some other things that are happening right now in the country that I personally believe American patriots need to be aware of. So let's start with, if you haven't already noticed it, it's posted in my community section. You can go there and get the link. There will be a new YouTube channel. It's already up. Please go there and subscribe. It's the Douglas Ducote Show. Again, the link is in the community section. Click on it, subscribe, ring the bell, because come next week, I will not be doing the show off this channel anymore, my personal channel. This channel is going to be other things that I've been doing for quite some time, but the show itself is going to be on the YouTube channel, the Douglas Ducote Show. Very soon, once we get all the technical things worked out, we'll be broadcasting live on the website as well. So let's talk first about what happened. Well, some of you may recall that on January 12th of 2021, President Trump went down to the border. He visited the wall and he gave a speech. It was broadcast live on C-SPAN. I believe Fox News played a little bit of it. CNN refused to broadcast it. MSNBC refused to broadcast it. All the liberal media outlets out there refused to broadcast it. I broadcasted it live for you. What took place? Let's see. Here's a direct quote from C-SPAN. President Trump delivered remarks near a section of the U.S. border with Mexico in Alamo, Texas. He touted his administration's success with the construction of the wall and his efforts in overhauling the U.S. immigration system. At the beginning of his remarks, President Trump said that free speech is under assault like never before. And boy, was he correct, because broadcasting his speech got me a 7-day strike. The 25th Amendment is of zero risk to me, but that it will come back to haunt Joe Biden and the Biden administration, he said. As the expression goes, be careful what you wish for. He went on to address the attack on the U.S. Capitol, saying that we believe in the rule of law, not violence or rioting, meaning the Republican Party and conservatives, and that it was time for peace. He then thanked all the men and women building the wall, as well as those in law enforcement serving on the border with Homeland Security, Customs and Border Patrol, Immigration Enforcement, ICE, the National Guard, and the sheriffs of counties on the border, as well as local and state police from Brownsville, Texas, all the way to San Diego. It was his farewell to those that have been keeping the border secure and safe, which was one of his top priorities. So, shortly thereafter, YouTube striked my account. And at first, it was kind of alarming because I didn't realize what I'd done wrong, especially with that video. I wasn't able to go back and rewatch my video, although it didn't really matter because I know what it was. It was Trump's speech live. And so YouTube said that it was graphic or controversial footage with sufficient content may be subject to age restrictions or a warning screen. And I thought, Well, that makes sense. And I did that. I did make it age restricted. This policy applies to videos, video descriptions, comments, live streams, which this was, and any other YouTube product or feature. Please note this is not a complete list, but an example. Here are the things that are not allowed: raw and unmodified re-uploads of content created by terrorist or criminal organizations. Well, I don't believe any of the people he was talking to on the border, nor do I believe him or his administration or terrorist or criminal organizations. Celebrating terrorist leaders or their crimes in songs or memorials. Nope, Trump wasn't doing that. Celebrating terrorist or criminal organizations of any sort. Nope. Content directing users to cite and expose terrorist ideology or use to dismantle prohibited content or use for recruitment. Nope, Trump didn't do that, nor did any of the people he was talking to. They were basically law enforcement and construction workers. Video game content, which has been developed or modified to glorify a violent event, its predators, or support violent criminal or terrorist organizations. Again, none of that was what took place in my video. What happens if content violates this policy? If your content violates this policy, we'll remove the content and send you an email to let you know. Well, they did remove it, and no, they did not send me an email. I found it out when I went to upload a video. If this is your first time violating our community guidelines, you'll get a warning with no penalty to your channel. If it is not, we'll issue a strike against your channel. That's what they did. If you get 3 strikes, your channel will be terminated. You can learn more about our strike system in more precise detail in the section under strikes on YouTube. Content intended to praise, promote, or add violent criminal organizations is not allowed on YouTube. These organizations are not allowed to use YouTube for any purposes, including recruitment. It didn't do any of that. If you find content that violates this policy, please report it. I guess somebody did, but they were wrong, but doesn't matter. YouTube agreed with them. Instructions for reporting violations of our community guidelines are available. If you found multiple videos or comments that you would like to report, you can do that as well. What this means for you, if you're posting content, don't post content on YouTube if it fits any of the descriptions noted below. Now, content that depicts insignia, logos, or symbols of violent criminals or terrorist organizations in order to praise or promote them. Video didn't do that. Content depicting hostages or posts with the intent to solicit, threaten, or intimidate on behalf of a violent criminal or terrorist organization. Nope, the video didn't do that. Content aimed at recruiting new members to violate or to violent criminal or terrorist organizations. Again, check no. Content praising or justifying violent acts carried out by violent criminals or terrorist organizations. Do you see a theme here? YouTube, owned by Google, looked at President Trump as a domestic terrorist, talking to his domestic terrorist group, which in their minds are Republicans and conservatives. There is no other way to get around that. Now, I challenge YouTube to tell me the truth. Just admit it. That Google does not want conservatives or Republicans to have freedom of speech. That's all this is about. If you're not calling the Trump organization domestic terrorists, then you obviously are calling the people that he was addressing domestic terrorists, law enforcement. And we know all too well what's been happening with our brave men and women in law enforcement all across this nation. Hell, not just the 4 years under President Trump, but the 8 years under Obama. The whole hands up, don't shoot that was all fake, didn't happen. You know, the Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, that whole deal. You know, the thing that kicked off Black Lives Matter and the NFL players that make millions taking a knee for the national anthem. Yeah, we all know how the liberals and the Democrats feel about men and women in law enforcement. Now, I'm the first to say, and I've done videos on this in the past, are there bad people in law enforcement? Of course there are. And I hope they get weeded out, and many of them do. And if they committed a crime, then they go to prison, or, you know, we can't have that. Okay? We can't have rogue police officers running the streets, making up shit as they go about their day-to-day business. But at the same time, it is a danger, a severe danger to law enforcement, to the rest of them that are good, decent people that actually signed up to support and defend and protect their communities. We can't have them being targets. And since this whole hands up, don't shoot thing started and spun out of control, we have seen the uprise of Antifa and BLM, and we've seen them cause not only severe damage in the multi-billions as far as police stations they burn, police cars they burn, courthouses they burn, church right next to the White House that they burned, mom and pop stores burned and looted, Targets burned and looted. We've also had thousands of police officers physically injured for life because of shit thrown at them, bricks, for instance, to their head. And sadly, many die. All because of a fake and false narrative. The narrative that law enforcement are racist bigots, and they wake up every day wondering how many young black unarmed youth they can go out and slaughter. None of which is true. It is absolutely not true. Never was, and it never will be. And while we're on the subject of law enforcement officers under attack, a Mississippi sheriff's deputy died after he was involved in a shooting incident Monday afternoon. That was yesterday. The Hancock sheriff's deputy, identified as Lieutenant Michael Butte, was airlifted to the University Medical Center in New Orleans after he was shot and injured near Killeen, Mississippi, which is located near the southeastern border with Louisiana. He passed away a short time after arriving at the hospital. The suspect involved in the shootout was also airlifted to the hospital. Authorities said that the lieutenant that was shot and died had been responding to a home about 20 miles north of Killeen. I say Killeen, it's actually Klein, K-I-L-N, when he was shot at that location. Sheriff Rick Adam told Jackson, Mississippi, WJTV, another deputy arrived for backup and shot the suspect who shot the first deputy. ATF New Orleans said its special agents were providing assistance to the Hancock County Sheriff's Office. So to the families and friends of this sheriff's deputy, our thoughts and prayers are with you. Let's continue, shall we? 2 FBI agents were killed today, this morning, and 3 others were wounded while trying to serve a search warrant at a home in Sunrise, Florida. Special Agent Daniel Affin and Special Agent Laura Schwarzenberger. The case they were responding to was involving child pornography. The suspect is dead. The incident unfolded around 6 a.m. this morning in the vicinity of the 10,000 block of Reflections Boulevard in Sunrise, Florida. 2 of the wounded agents were transported to the hospital and were in stable condition. The names of the deceased will not be released at this time, although I just gave it to you because it's all over social media and the families that come forward and have said, this is our loved one. Every week, going back to the beginning of the Obama administration, police officers are targeted, and they still are as I speak. And those on the left, like Antifa and BLM, that have stirred this pot to endanger the lives of our brave men and women in law enforcement, well, some of them are elected officials. You may recall in the first year of the Trump administration when AOC, Ilhan Omar, Rashid Tlaib went down to the border to tour the kids in cages. And when they went back to Washington, D.C., they held press conferences and they talked about how they felt their lives were in danger. They felt intimidated. They were sexually harassed, all because of these scary men in uniforms with guns. That is correct. They were referring to the Border Patrol agents that were very professional that gave them their tour that they requested. They went back and they lied their ass off to the American people. AOC the most, by talking about how she felt that in their eyes they were trying to intimidate her. And in some cases, she felt that she was being looked up and down as a piece of meat. And yes, the whole thing was caught on video. Border Patrol doesn't just let people go, no matter who they are, into their facilities without it being monitored. And AOC and Rashid Tlaib and Ilhan Omar were all full of shit. It wasn't true. But it was a way to stir up their base that, once again, law enforcement are evil. And in this case, the ones on the border. Well, then we had the event that took place just recently in Washington, D.C., where a group of people that were present at a Trump support for recount of the election and bringing it in front of Congress to hear the evidence, a group who was infiltrated by Antifa members stormed into the Capitol. And sadly, a police officer was killed. Within a week, 2 Capitol police officers committed suicide. An Air Force veteran female was shot and killed by a police officer. It was just an absolute nightmare. But you see, the members of Congress were protected. They were all led away from the area, pulled out of their offices where they were told to shelter in place, brought down a secret tunnel out of the Capitol and out of the building to where they could not be harmed. Law enforcement did that. Capitol Police did that to protect them, just in case. Could there have been some people in that group that wanted to do harm to Nancy Pelosi or AOC or any of those members of Congress? Sure, that's possible. It didn't happen. But what AOC has come out and said now is mind-boggling. It goes right along with their narrative that cops are bad people. She now has PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, the thing that combat veterans sometimes suffer from, and other people that have been raped or witnessed a murder or survived a plane crash. She said that when the Capitol police officer came to get her out of her office, she was hiding in the bathroom. And when she realized it was a Capitol police officer, she came out because she was fearing for her life. That these people that entered the Capitol were going to take her out and do harm to her and or kill her. That's her words, not mine. But she can't stop there. Nope. She goes on to say that she felt more in danger by the officer with the Capitol Police that was there to save her life from the Trump supporters that were there to kill her. And she could tell in his eyes his disgust for her. And that she only went along with him out of fear of the Trump supporters. But she actually felt that he may be leading her to them and turning her over to them. That's a sitting member of your United States Congress, who from day one, every chance she gets, makes up some excuse to slam law enforcement. And she has a big following on Twitter. Twitter's not shutting her down. Nope. They're letting her spew this shit nonstop. If you're on Twitter, go check it out. Listen to her own words. What I just said to you. It's all there. Moving on. The newly elected the newly selected acting head of the Justice Department's criminal division, selected by Joe Biden administration, is a former colleague of the attorney now representing his son, Hunter Biden. I couldn't make this up if I tried. That's right, my friends. The person that Joe Biden puts to run the Justice Department right now, temporarily, until there's a selection process by members of Congress, was an attorney helping to represent his son, Hunter Biden. You think Hunter Biden's going to be investigated? Nope, he's going to walk just like all the rest of the Democrats that we've watched Trump expose in the last 4 years. You know, here's a prime example of how dangerous the left really is. A man who was twice bailed out of jail in separate cases by a fund supported by Vice President Kamala Harris has been arrested again while under investigation for another possible case, Minnesota prosecutors said. According to the county attorney's office, Thomas Mosley, age 29, had been arrested and released in cases involving allegations that including damaging a police precinct in August and rioting in December. Yes, he was a member of Antifa. And yes, Democrats and liberals and our vice president, who was just a member of Congress at the time, put up money to get Antifa out of jail. They posted their bond. He was arrested again on January 27th, just 22 days after his latest release. During that span, he is also suspected of trying to illegally purchase a gun, and officers are now investigating that matter as well. Mosley is facing 3 new felony counts of fifth-degree possession of a controlled substance while in possession of a firearm for allegedly having marijuana, cocaine, and shrooms. In 2 previously mentioned cases, the new criminal complaint says, refer to property damage and gun possession charges, the defendant was able to secure unconditional release after the Minnesota Freedom Fund posted a $5,000 cash bail, in addition to a bond that had been previously secured. In a third, now pending case, the defendant was then charged with riot in a second degree from an event that occurred on December 31st, 2020. The complaint goes on to say that in that case, the Minnesota Freedom Fund again secured Mosley's release, that time posting a $60,000 bail. So, just imagine for a moment if any Republican member of Congress helped a group, supported a group that was putting up the bail to get those that entered the Capitol and did the damage they did to get them out of jail. How irate would half of America be right now? Well, that's what these people did for the Democrats, for liberals. They protect their own. The Minnesota Freedom Fund says it is part of a larger movement to end the harms of money bail and jailing people for poverty. The organization received support from Senator Harris in June when she tweeted, if you are able to, chip in now to @Minnesota Freedom Fund to help post bail for those protesting on the ground in Minnesota. He was burning down a police precinct. A Fox 9 report from August revealed that the organization bailed out individuals, including Darankin Floyd, who was charged with second-degree murder after allegedly stabbing a friend to death, and Christopher Boswell, who is facing charges of sexual assault and kidnapping. The group put up $100,000 on behalf of Floyd and $350,000 on behalf of Boswell to get them out of jail. As for Mosley, his latest arrest stems from events arising from his apprehension in October, but he is also under investigation on suspicion that he allegedly used straw buyers to buy a semi-automatic weapon from a store on January 7th and again on January 12th. He had just been released in one of his other cases on January 5th, according to jail records. On October 15th, 2020, Mosley was apprehended during a protest during a court appearance from a former officer involved in a police encounter that led to George Floyd's death. Officers who saw Mosley in the courthouse knew that Mosley had already been suspected of damaging a police precinct on August 15th, and they arrested him for that. During the arrest, they found a gun in his waistband. The new criminal complaint states that after the October arrest, police obtained a search warrant for Mosley's truck after officers noticed the smell of marijuana and what appeared to be a gun in the case in the car. After performing a search, police recovered marijuana, cocaine, and mushrooms, as well as several handguns, a rifle, a shotgun, and ammunition, and other items including a hatchet, crowbar, gas mask, and spray paint can. More weapons and marijuana were found at Mosley's home. On January 10th, tests confirmed the nature of the drugs, and Mosley was arrested later in the month and bail set at $250,000 this time. And as of right now, he is still in jail. After Kamala Harris and her group helped bail all these Antifa thugs, aka domestic terrorists, out of jail. Yeah. Biden on Tuesday, today, signed 3 executive orders on illegal and legal immigration as part of an aggressive push in the early days of his presidency to roll back many of his predecessors' policies. One of the orders will create a task force to push forward with the reunification of migrants who were separated from family members at the border during the Trump administration via the zero tolerance policy. Let me just stop for a second. Let me remind everybody. I don't care who you are. Doesn't matter. If you're out in public anywhere in America and you're caught by law enforcement committing a crime and they're going to take you to jail for that crime, and you have in your possession your child or someone else's child, that child is not going with you to the jail cell. No, they're being turned over to proper authorities to determine who the child is, who they belong to, and find another parent or someone to take custody of them because they're not going with the person they're arresting. That's no different than what's going on at the border. But you can't convince that to liberals and Democrats. Nope. Not to mention that we know, it's factual information, that most of those kids were brought over by coyotes and mules that weren't their parent. And we're just supposed to let them go with them. No matter what the crime is, whether it's illegally crossing or crossing with drugs or sex trafficking. That's right, yeah. The kids are sex trafficking. Put them in a cell with the guy that did it. Does that make any sense? I don't even want to, I can't even, I don't even want to read. I got this whole shit here that I printed out, combination of stuff from Fox News and actually CNN. And it's disgusting to me to even talk about that border anymore. Because I've been there. You can see on my YouTube channel here. You can see at douglasducote.com the documentaries I did on that border. The people we interviewed. We shared with America what was really going on down there. And it allowed me to become friends, personal friends with Angel family members. Angel families, it's a club. It's a club that no one wants to go into. To get into that club, well, your child has to be murdered by an illegal immigrant. And sadly, that club is going to grow in leaps and bounds. And I know firsthand how distraught those families are right now with what's happening with the Biden administration. Stopping the border wall construction. It's over. Never be finished while he's there. Defunding law enforcement all over the country, much less the border. Border Patrol, you think they're going to get more money from the Biden administration or Homeland Security? How about ICE? No, they're going to disband ICE. The Biden administration decided that we're no longer deporting anyone, no matter what their crimes are, out of this country until he has a chance to look at all the policies and procedures and guidelines that Trump put into place. It's pretty damn sickening. Former House Oversight Committee Chairman Trey Gowdy criticized the Senate's handing down to former FBI lawyer Kevin Kleinston after he pleaded guilty to falsifying a document in relation to the Russia investigation. One guy, one little fish in the barrel. FBI lawyer Kevin Kleinsmith. He is the only one out of well over 100 that has been convicted over the Russia collusion hoax that wasn't true. Gowdy, a former federal prosecutor himself, recalled his past experience working with the FBI agents. Every one of those agents I work with, you'd be proud to have as your next door neighbor, a coach on your kid's team. That was the FBI I know, he said. But that was not the FBI that was in charge of the Russia collusion investigation. I never met or worked with an FBI agent like Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, James Comey. When I was a prosecutor, I never met an FBI agent or employee who would let his own political opinions influence his work. I never worked with an FBI lawyer like Kevin Kleinsmith. Kevin Kleinsmith was actively, vocally biased against President Trump, Gowdy continued. He also falsified a document to make it easier to target a political opponent. Kevin Kleinsmith thought he was part of some great moral resistance I might add, to a duly elected president. Gowdy added that America prides itself on being a nation of laws where justice and fairness are watchwords. But that requires excellence from the men and women we empower to enforce those laws. We need a justice system that is not only respected, but worthy of our respect. Where have you heard that before? In Kleinsmith's case, he thought it was okay to use his incredible powers to target political enemies. You know, when you think about law enforcement and what they're supposed to do, it's not just a badge and a gun and a uniform. It's more than that. It's trust. It's a sacred trust. We trust you with the power to arrest, to detain, to search, to deprive our citizens of their freedom. Those are awesome powers. All we ask in return is that you use those powers justly, fairly, and appropriately. I cannot think of anything more unjust than manufacturing evidence to hurt a political opponent and then lying about it. Kevin Kleinsmith was caught. If you're wondering what the proper punishment is for someone we entrust with the special powers who manufacture evidence, the proper punishment, apparently, is probation. Not a single day in prison for abusing your position of trust to manufacture evidence against a political opponent. Not a single day in prison. The media and the Democrats wanted Roger Stone to go to jail for 7 to 9 years for lying to Congress. The media and the Democrats were delighted that George Papadopoulos and Michael Flynn and others were facing active prison sentences for making false statements. But you don't hear much about Kevin, who didn't get a single solitary day in prison. I wish we lived in a world where people who commit similar offenses would receive similar sentences, Gowdy concluded. That would be nice. That would be fair. That would be just. That would be equal. Where have you heard that before? I've been saying for a long, long time now that the justice system in America is broken. There are one set of rules for Democrats, another set of rules for Republicans. If you haven't figured that out in the last 4 years, then, well, you're a liberal Democrat, or you're smoking something that's really messing up your mind, and you probably shouldn't do that. Special counsel John Durham's investigation is largely focused on the activities of the FBI as he reviews the origins of the Trump-Russia probe. Fox News has learned, but sources familiar with the investigation said the prosecution of high-level FBI officials like Director James Comey is unlikely. Sources told Fox News that the investigation is ongoing and Durham completed the CIA portion of his investigation last year and has now shifted his focus to activities of the FBI. One source also told Fox News that Durham had been pursuing new incredible leads through the end of the Trump administration, though it is unclear at this point what those lines entail. A spokesman for the special counsel told Fox News they had no comment from Mr. Durham. Durham's investigation has produced one criminal charge so far against former FBI lawyer Kevin Kleinsmith, who was accused of altering an email related to the surveillance of former Trump campaign aide Carter Page. That prosecution, though, did not allege a broader conspiracy within the FBI and the conduct that was involved, and had largely been laid out in the Justice Department Inspector General's report from last December. Kleinsmith in August pleaded guilty to making the false statement to Durham's team. The offense carried a maximum term imprisonment of 5 years and a fine of $250,000. Last week, Kleinsman was sentenced to 12 months probation and 400 hours of community service and no fine. The Justice Department relied on Kleinsmith's assertions as it submitted a third and final review application in 2017 to surveil Page under the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. Durham's investigation began in May of 2019, shortly after special counsel Robert Mueller completed his year-long investigation into whether the Trump campaign conspired with the Russians to influence the 2016 presidential election. Mueller's investigation, as you all know, yielded no evidence of criminal conspiracy or coordination between the Trump campaign, anyone in the Trump campaign, anyone associated with the president, of having anything to do with Russia during the 2016 elections. Meanwhile, in December, Durham expanded his team, adding new prosecutors after former Attorney General Bill Barr appointed him in October as special counsel to ensure he could continue his investigation during the Biden administration. I told you all recently, there's going to be no charges. And if there are charges, like in this Kleinsman's case, he's not going to go to jail. Nope. In the scope order, Barr stated that Durham is authorized to investigate whether any federal official, employee, or any other person or entity violated the law in connection with the intelligence, counterintelligence, or law enforcement activities directed at the 2016 presidential campaigns, individually associated with those campaigns, and individuals associated with the administration of President Donald J. Trump, including but not limited to, ready for this, Crossfire Hurricane and the investigation of special counsel Robert S. Mueller. Under U.S. Code, the special counsel would produce a confidential report and is ordered to submit to the Attorney General a final report and such interim reports as he deems appropriate in a form that will permit public review. As for Comey, the former FBI director last year said Durham's probe was not concerning for him. Of course not. I have no contact with him and haven't talked to him, Comey told CBS News Face the Nation last August. I can't imagine that I'm a target. Also over the summer, Durham's team questioned former CIA Director John Burnham and so for some 8 hours at CIA headquarters, which means that they sat around and told war stories and drank coffee, maybe ate some donuts, probably ordered from Krispy Kreme. Burnham later said through a spokesperson he was assured by them that he was not a target. Burnham in December, during an appearance on Fox News Sunday, said he had no problem with Durham's investigation continuing into 2021. No shit. I think that is fine. I have no problem with that, Burnham said, adding that he's already sat down with Durham's team for 8 hours. I do believe that John Durham is going to carry out his responsibilities, able and hopefully not with any political influence. 2 sets of justice. The blindfold that Lady Justice wears, take that off. Nope. We watched unfold in front of our eyes. We saw it with our own eyes. We heard it. We read it. We watched it testify and lie. James Comey, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, Burnham, this Kleinsmith dude, Hillary Clinton, and all of her minions. Hell, We watched James Comey come out just before the election between Trump and Hillary Clinton, laid out all the crimes that she committed, told it to us in a press conference, which wasn't his job to do. It's for the Justice Department to do. But it wouldn't have mattered because Loretta Lynch was the head of the Justice Department. And who was she meeting with at an airport on a private jet? Bill Clinton, the husband of the woman who's being investigated for federal crimes with her email server and all that crap. We watched it unfold in front of us. No charges. They basically said, this is what they said in a nutshell. Hillary's dumb. She didn't know any better. She's just stupid. You know how many people are in prison for doing something stupid or because they didn't know any better? When is that an excuse? Oh, I didn't know. That's not how it works. But it does in America. And we wonder why so many Americans no longer trust law enforcement. It's no longer about Black Lives Matter and Antifa. It's about corrupt members at the highest level of our Department of Justice and our FBI and the CIA. We've come to a point in this country where the left has infiltrated everything. They've infiltrated our entire government system. But worse is they infiltrated our education system right under our nose. And they started indoctrinating our youth from kindergarten through college, especially out on the West Coast, of how bad America is, how evil America is, and how we're no better than any other country. They indoctrinate them to believe that we're the big bully on planet Earth. And then you end up where we're at today with that youth that's been preached this, turn 18 and vote. I shared something recently with my wife that I'm going to share with you. Although I hope I'm 100% wrong. And I'm going to do everything in my power between now and the time I'm done on Earth to spread the conservative values. But I do not believe there will ever be Republicans in charge of our government again after what we've just witnessed take place with this election and what the liberals have been able to do all across this country. The America that I fought for, that I served for as a law enforcement officer and in the military and in the National Guard, that America, it's not the America today. I don't know where that America went. Don't have a clue. What's happening today is sad. Now, we can dwell in it, or we can push forward, keep exposing it in hopes that we can change some minds, get people actively involved with their kids in their schools, go to the PTA meetings, go to the school board meetings, Find out what they're teaching your kids. Volunteer, for crying out loud, because that's where it has to change. If you can't go back to teaching children about the real history of America, then you're done. America is done. We'll never have another Republican president, and Republicans will never be in charge of the House or the Senate. And while I'm talking about Republicans, let me just say that I'm so disgusted with many, I'd say 98% of the Republicans in Congress. Because when they had the opportunity, when they had 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue and the House and the Senate to fix all these problems that have now come back to bite us in the ass, they didn't do anything but collect a fat paycheck. And when Democrats stood up and said horrible, hateful things about America, they stayed silent. When Alihan Omar said hateful and disgusting things about our veterans and those that were involved in the operation Mogadishu and Somalia, they stayed silent. People like me spoke up. People on Fox News spoke up. Other conservatives, Republicans that have YouTube channels and things like that spoke up against her for what she did. Veterans spoke up when she called them, the Black Hawk Down movie. If you haven't seen it, see it. That's what we're talking about here. Black Hawk Down movie. She called those brave men and women the real terrorist. A sitting member of Congress who took an oath to protect the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, for her hand on the Quran. She took an oath to Allah, not God. How's that possible? America was founded on the principles of God. Period. It's in everything. It's on your money. And God we trust. You believe in the power of prayer? If you do, don't let your fellow Americans down, and don't let God down. Please go to the new Douglas Ducote Show YouTube channel. The link is in my community section if you can't find it, which several people have been saying. Also go to douglasducote.com, my website. I'll see you Thursday night at 8 p.m. Central Time for another episode of the Douglas Ducote Show. Thank you all for joining me. As always, please say a prayer for our men and women serving in the United States military, our veterans, our law enforcement officers, our first responders, their families, our angel families, our blue and gold star families, and our country. God bless the United States of America. Now, more today than ever in its history. Good night, everyone.